Well, not quite sure what happened there, but sorry about that. Sometimes when you're out in the country, you don't really know what's going to happen, especially when you have like 3 bars on your cell phone. But we're back. So now we've got, I got to get back here now. Yeah, Frank James, video pause. Yes, it did. Tom Davis checking in. All Aquatic, Scott Lindsay, Clint Loveday.
Awesome name.
Yeah, you like that Clint name. Clint Steffens, Clint Loveday. Look at there. Jack Hamilton from Indiana was checking in with us as well. Ricky Kim, Todd Austin. My gosh, Clint, we got people from all over the place. Now we're rolling again. There's hey, Matt Rail. You met sorry, Matt. You met Matt at the last Pond Boss conference. He's got the pond management company up in Rushville, Indiana. Great guy. He's probably the premier aeration expert in the nation. So if anybody wants to know about aeration, they need to be talking to Matt Rail. John Wilson. John, dude, you're not at a ball game. What happened? The Astros. We're not far from Houston, and the Astros beat his Cleveland Indians.
Sorry, bud.
Yeah, you know.
There's a fire happening down here.
We're not making fun of you, John. We love you, brother. Shannon Kane checking in from Sherman, Texas. So now that you know what? I want to go back. I was going to read a question that we got here. Let me see if I can find it. The question is, all right, this is from Kevin Nance. Kevin says, since you will be discussing building fishing lakes and excavation, my question is about a 3-acre pond I just took ownership of in Leonard, Texas. Leonard is northeast of McKinney, kind of northeast of Dallas. It's pretty well silted in, with the depth being around 5 to 7 feet in most of the pond that I've checked. I'm still unpacking, so I haven't checked it all. What that means to me is he hasn't been able to get out and check the deepest water, which is where the borrow pit would be, where they move the dirt, you know, to build the dam. Unfortunately, there's no place to dig a new pond on the property, only 5 acres that I own, so I either need to rehab this pond or just live with it. I am assuming, based on some of your earlier podcasts, that the cost associated with draining and digging out a pond this size, moving the dirt 3 times, I think I've read. Yeah, here's what I've said in the past. What I've said in the past is that if you're going to rehab a pond, you got to get the water off, then you got to get the silt out or the sludge out. So that's the first time you move it. You're probably going to stockpile it somewhere or pour it over the back side of the dam. Then you got to move it again. So you're going to be moving that dirt basically 3 times. You know, you're going to push it down the pond with a bulldozer. Then you're going to pick it up with a track hoe. Then you're going to pitch it over the back side of the dam. Then you're going to let it dry enough that you can shape it with a bulldozer. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
So you're going to move it several times. And that could be cost prohibitive. The only other way I've found is to add aeration to the pond, which will open up a whole other series of questions. We'll save those for later. I'll tackle a little bit of that here in a minute. And allow that to slowly over time work on breaking down the sediment. Are there any other effective ways to remove that sediment layer or steps I can do in addition to aeration? Kevin Nance. So I'm going to hit the aeration thing first. The thing about aeration is what aeration does is it allows you to move organic matter, which can be composted and then fundamentally used as nutrients or released as a gas. So the thing that's interesting about aeration to try to relieve a pond of sediment is when you're dealing with true sediment that's dirt, it's broken down to its basic form and you're not going to get rid of any mass. But if you've got big piles of leaves or big piles of organic matter, you know, grass clippings, tree branches, things like that, you can break that down over a long period of time with aeration, but don't count on aeration to effectively increase the depth of a pond. So Clint, if you've got, here, let's just take the question here. What are the choices that Kevin's got to increase the depth of his pond sight unseen? Just what are his choices?
My experience with removing silt and ponds that are silted in is that you will never be happy with the pond or the lake unless you go in and revamp the lake and get all of the silt out of there. Get back down to what the normal or the original bottom was. If you don't, with silt, with having depths of 5 to 7 feet, you're going to have problems with the heat during the summertime. You're going to have weed issues. You're going to have clarity problems. It's just lily pads, never ending. The best way to do it, get the water off of it, let it dry as long as you possibly can. Let that silt get as dry as it possibly can. Go in, clean the silt out, and see what you have. If you need to add depth at that point, add depth. But the good thing about it is you've got the lake dry, you've got it cleaned out. Now you can easily create more depth by short moves of dirt. Okay, my pond was a teardrop. Well, now we're going to take some dirt from here. We're going to make a peninsula. We're going to take this dirt and we're going to shuffle it over here. We're going to give depth throughout the lake as opposed to having all that depth right in front of the dam. That's going to make your lake healthier. You're going to have depth throughout, as well as having some, areas that aren't as deep.
Okay.
And you can put those out in, you can put some of your spawning areas out in the center of the lake where you don't have the weed issue close to the bank.
See, I hadn't even thought about that. So if you're going to build spawning areas out in the center of a lake, then you're going to give up some depth so that you can have a few shallow areas, like an underwater hump.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that what you're thinking?
We've done a couple things that look like basically a birthday cake out in the center of the lake with straight walls all around it. And so you have a flat area where you've got a place for fry to grow and congregate, but you've got a quick drop off to where if you're in casting distance, you're casting out to that thing, and when you come over the lip, that's where your big fish are going to be hanging, waiting for those natural fry.
Okay.
So it's some things we've done like that.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Jazzy things.
I love that. So what you're saying is, like in Kevin's case, if I'm hearing what you're saying right, he's going to need to drain that pond, and or even before he drains it, he really needs to kind of quantify how much silt he's got in order to figure what it's going to cost.
If that's possible. The tricky thing with silt is if you don't know what the original depths were for sure, then you're not going to know how much silt you have.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I've found out through the years of working with doing silt removal is it tends to multiply every time you touch it.
What do you mean by that?
As we've got an excavator sitting on the dam or off the face of the dam a little bit, and we're grabbing that silt and we're throwing it over the back side of the dam, which will later dry up. We'll use that to increase the slope off the back side of the dam.
Okay.
But what happens is when you have that dozer in the bottom and it's crowding the rest of that silt to the excavator, you're going to pick up a little bit of dirt from the bottom.
Okay. So you got to be careful about that.
And I think silt is magical. I really think that it just grows as you touch it with metal.
All right. So what I'm hearing you say is it's okay to approach a project like what Kevin's talking about, and maybe what if he spends some time? What if he spends some time in a boat with a probe, like a long piece of PVC pipe, getting to the top of the silt, and then pushing down in it, and then begin to figure out how much silt he's got. Then he can say, well, I got a 3-acre pond, and 2/3 of the bottom is covered with an average of 3 feet of silt. That's at least a starting point.
It is.
And he can begin to figure out the things that he could possibly do. And he's really got a couple of choices. I mean, really, if you're going to move silt out of a pond, you got to get the water off. So what we'd tell Kevin, I think, is to drain the pond over the winter. Even if you have to cut the dam, open a valve, whatever you got, get all the water out. We can talk about the fish later. We can talk about that before you drain the pond. But get the water off, let it sit, and let as much water drain out of that silt. That silt almost looks like a nasty chocolate pudding. Is that right?
Correct.
You know, and so just imagine taking a bulldozer and trying to push pudding. It ain't going to work. So the more water that you can get out of that silt, the easier it's going to be to deal with later on. I know that you and I were talking before the show. You were saying, well, one of the things that you like to do is to take a bulldozer and start, we're down on good solid ground in the upper end of the pond, and start shoving some of that silt down the pond, and then take a track hoe, an excavator, and start picking it up, spinning around, sit on top of the dam if it'll reach, and then reach down and scoop up some of that silt, turn around, and throw it over the edge of the pond and start putting it on the back side of the dam. Fair statement?
Correct.
So what Kevin could do is he's got a couple of choices. He can drain the pond and start positioning the thing where he could excavate some silt, and we'd have to figure out about how much silt there is to figure out how much it's going to cost. But a second thing he could do to get some depth is to look at what it would take to raise the pond up, for the pond dam 4 or 5 feet. So if you were going to look at trying to raise the dam, what are some of the things you're looking at about that? What would you do?
If we're going to raise the dam, we're going to have to harvest some good clay.
You're talking about good clay?
Meaning we're going to add on to the lake if that's possible.
Okay.
Because you're going to want to increase the size of your lake. There's no sense in not increasing the size of your lake if you're having to excavate dirt. There's no sense in buying dirt when you own the dirt's cheaper. We can pick it up, we can move it.
So
2 for 1.
What I'm hearing you say, I think, is you want to scrape the topsoil off the top of the dam and have some clay from around the perimeter of the dam.
Well, you're gonna take that,
or
but you're gonna go from the outsides of the lake. You're gonna go from the back end, the sides, and you're gonna get. You probably still need to lower your water level a little bit.
Okay.
You know, we have done a couple projects where we dug an entire addition to the lake, left a boundary, like a block, shaped it, cut it all out, and then at the last minute, cut it loose, and it filled up with water.
So if the dam, in other words, if what's Kevin's saying, the pond is only 5 to 7 feet deep, what you could do is you could raise the dam, say 3 feet, if there's room to do that, and then go around the perimeter of the lake, the new lake, collect some clay there if there's clay, and put that on top of the dam and build a brand new perimeter for basically a new pond. Is that what you're saying?
An extension. You're just adding on. So we're going to leave like a little barrier between this lake and the addition. We're going to cut out everything. We're going to add that to the top of the dam to increase the height. And then after that, we're going to cut out a wedge and let that fill, the new section fill.
Okay.
Well, now that we've added 3 feet, now we have this little, keyway out there that may be just an underwater structure.
Okay. So in other words, if we can go down a couple of feet with the silt and go up 3 feet, we're making the pond bigger. We're getting the depth that he wants, and not really kind of trying to redo something or build a new pond, but you can increase the size and buy new life.
Correct.
So let's just for all of our viewers out there that are thinking about something like that, if we were to take this 3-acre pond and we see that if we raise the dam 3 feet, and there's room to do that, and we take out a couple of feet of silt and put it on the back side of the dam, and then come on the inside and sculpt the inside of it to create good fish habitat, and increase the size of the pond from 3 acres to 4 acres, just ballpark. Let's say, okay, so we got 3 acres of pond bottom roughly, and 2/3 is covered with silt, so that's 2 acres, and we've got 2 feet, so now we got 2 acre feet, so now we've got about 4,000 cubic yards of silt. You get that number? So in other words, we got 2 acres. An acre, 1 acre, 1 foot deep is 1,666 cubic yards. So if we've got 2 feet, now we've got 3,300 cubic yards of silt. And say there's, just to round the number up, 4,000 cubic yards of silt. And we're going to be able to push it, dig it up, throw it over the back side of the dam. What's the ballpark cost of that? Is that $3 a yard? Is that $4 a yard? Is that $2 a yard? Is that going to be 4,000 yards of dirt? Just, I don't want to put you on the spot. Just guess. Just, what's a guess?
Ooh. It's kind of like saying, I want a watch.
There's $19 watches and $40 watches.
And there's $10,000 watches.
Okay.
Silt is a whole different animal. I would say it's probably going to range up a little closer to about $350 a yard.
Okay, so
and it really depends because you never know what stage it's at. Is it soupy? Is it really wet? Because you know, we've taken silt and we've thrown it over the backside of the dam that was in a sludge or more like a pudding form.
Mm-hmm.
And depending upon your climate and what the season does and what the weather pattern does, it may take 3 weeks for that to dry up enough for you to get a dozer across the top of it. It may take 3 months.
It may take a year.
It may take a year.
Yep.
All right. It's a whole different beast.
What I hear you saying there is that there's really no way of knowing what to project until you start getting in there and moving it around.
Correct. The drier, the better. If you can get the water off of it and keep the water off of it. So, you know, the bad thing about it is normally you're going to have to cut a hole in your dam. But the good part about it is you're not going to constantly have to be pumping every time it fills back up.
So it's kind of an offset cost.
You're going to have equipment there anyway that's going to be able to fix that dam and bring it back up to what it was, or add more to it.
I'm going to come back to that topic here in a minute. So let's go back to this. We got 4,000 cubic yards of silt in Kevin's pond. Can you move that silt for $20,000?
Yes,
maybe?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you move it for 15?
Again, it really depends on what.
All right. So here's where I'm trying to go. To move 4,000 cubic yards of silt out of a pond in Leonard, Texas, assuming that there's 2 feet of it average, you're going to spend somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 to move the silt out. Now, to raise the dam and then go around the perimeter of the pond to reshape it and build some new fish habitat, fish structure, could that be done for a pond that goes from 3 acres to 4 acres? Can that be done for $10,000?
No.
More?
Yes.
Okay, so that's going to be...
To me, this topic is almost a no-brainer because if you're adding on extra stuff, the biggest problem that we face as dirt contractors and pond builders and people who use heavy equipment is the cost of moving it. The size of the equipment that we have, most of our equipment has to go down the road on an 18-wheeler. Whether you own a 18-wheeler or whether you have it, I have all mine hired out. I don't charge any extra. Exactly what they charge me is what I, add into my bid. I don't make any money on that. I don't want the headache of having to have a truck.
So you're leasing some equipment as you're going?
Well, no. What I'm saying is the cost of hauling in the equipment is the same for if we're just adding on and moving dirt on the top of the dam. As it is if we're going to come in and clean out the lake. You're going to have the heavy equipment there.
Okay.
I think your money is better spent cleaning out, revamping, getting the shape you want. I bought this property and this lake looks like a teardrop, but I'd really rather it have a kidney bean shape,
Okay.
I would like to put a dock on this end so that we can sit out here in the evenings and enjoy the lake.
Okay.
I think you're money ahead removing your silt. I think it's a healthier process. I think it's healthier for the lake.
Because you've added a bunch of new years to the life.
You've added a whole bunch of years to the life.
Okay. All right.
And do you?
Yeah, I see. I get it. No, I get it. I get it. What I'm trying to figure out is how we can convey this information to our viewers, where there is no exact science when it comes to trying to renovate a pond. You know, there's no exact science when it comes to trying to build a pond, because when you start moving dirt, you don't know what's under the ground. You know, so and really what I'm trying to tell you guys is, and what I hear Clint saying, is that the more due diligence you can do in the planning phase, the better idea you can get on what it's going to cost. So to answer Kevin's question, we know it's going to cost somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 to move the silt, and it may cost upwards of $20,000 more to raise the dam and turn it into a 4-acre pond on his 5 acres worth of land. You know, and if that increases the value of that property by 40 grand or 50 grand, it might be worth doing it. Or, you know, one angle we haven't taken is, what if he lives with it? What's he got? So he's got a pond that he figures is 5 to 7 feet deep, full of silt at the end of its life. And if he's going to live with it, what's he going to live with? He's going to live with shallow water, fertile water, probably some fish kills, I would bet. You know, he's going to live with, you know, anytime you got shallow water, you're going to end up with some kind of aquatic plant growth. You know, and most people don't really like that. So his kind of catch-22 is that he's got to decide, can I live with that, or should I spend somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 to completely renovate it?
Well,
is that fair?
Yeah, no, it is.
Okay.
It is. And I believe Kevin was saying he really just purchased the property not too long ago, still unpacking. Was
yes.
Part of the question?
Yeah.
Kevin, the only thing I can tell you is the same as Bob and I are sitting on a horseshoe patio that I wanted when we built this house. And, you know, it was above and beyond the cost of what we had agreed on. And, you know, my contractor said, cry once. So
he was a pretty compassionate contractor, wasn't he?
Cry once.
Yeah.
Just if you want it and you can afford to do it the right way and do it right the first time. If you
and just pay for it
and be done. If you can't afford to do it now, I would say wait a little while till you can, and then do it right and get it the way you want it, because then you're truly going to be happy with it.
Yep. Let me, I think we ended up having to start the video over because we lost our connection. I was sitting here, I see my wife, Debbie Dobbs Lusk. Papa, we love you. She's hanging out with Grand Peeps tonight. I'll be there in a little bit, honey. Craig McBride, Matt Rail, thanks, bud. Great show, you bet. Jason Nepstad, you may want to share this new live feed to your timeline. Yeah, I'll have to figure that out here in a minute, Jason. John Wilson, Scott Lindsay. Hey, John, I'm glad to see you and David Ricks and Joe and all those guys hanging out. David Brackman, drain it and start over. That's probably the very, very best advice. That's the very best advice. Ponds are expensive like anything that one enjoys. Get over it and suck it up. That's kind of what you just said.
Oh, that's
okay. You know what? And let me kind of
awesome.
put that in perspective. Let's say he spends $50,000 to do that. How much is a brand new tricked out bass boat? $80,000. A brand new tricked out Triton bass boat. Now a Ranger bass boat might only be $50,000. And you're not going to pull it with that pickup. So the bottom line is you can go buy a brand new bass boat for $50,000 to $80,000.
And then you have the public boat ramp. I was here first, Bob.
Oh,
I was here first.
Come on, bring it. And then when you finally get to launch your boat after you spent $250 on gas and ice and bait, and got your tackle all geared up and loaded up, and you finally get to launch an hour after daylight, and you get out to your favorite spot, somebody's there, and you might catch a fish or not, you know. So spend 50 grand on a bass boat or fix your pond, which is also going to increase the value of your property. And in Leonard, Texas, that's, you know, spending $40,000 to $60,000 to renovate a pond is probably, as much as we don't like to say that, that's probably the most reasonable, smart thing to do. Ryan Schusler, Troy Goldsby. Let's see here. Matt Rail, he's saying, and Craig McBride's kind of chuckling, cry once. That's the quote of the day, folks. Cry once. Matt Rail's asking this. He says, what do you think of mapping, especially soft sediment mapping? Have you been involved in that much?
I have not.
Well, we've been involved in that a little bit. Now there's some software out there where you can take a depth finder and some side scan sonar imaging, and you can actually figure out where the silt is and about how much is there. So you can actually get out and start to quantify the volume of silt. And that's, you know, that might cost $2,500. It might cost, depending on the size of the lake and how much time it takes, it may cost $5,000 to go out and actually quantify the volume of silt. What do you think about that?
That's interesting.
It's very interesting. So because if somebody can figure out just how much silt they've got, then it's easier to come back to you and say, well, hey, this is what we have. Now, a real interesting thing that Clint said earlier is the more water that you get out of that silt, the easier it is to move it. So if the dollars are truly an issue, cut the dam, let it drain, let it sit for 9 months, a year, 18 months. Because if you think about it, the more water that drains out of that silt, the less dirt there'll be. And well, it'll be the same amount of dirt, less water, less effort to move it. Oh, I just struck a nerve.
If we can get it to the consistency of dirt or dry dirt, now I'm picking up something soft, dry, easy. I can load it in an off-road truck. I can take it maybe somewhere else on the property.
Yep.
I can turn it into a nice mogul or a backdrop for a shooting range. Oh. I can do something with it other than just sling it behind the dam and hope it doesn't run through the fence and onto the neighbor's property.
Look at this. Let's see where there's, let's see. Tanya and John Red hanging out from St. Louis. Darren Wolf, Whitesburg. Dave Brackman says $50,000 every 10 years is $5,000 a year to have an awesome pond all the time. So, but really, if you think about that, that's such a valid point, Clint. If somebody spends $50,000 to renovate a pond, clean the silt out, take that 3-acre pond, turn it to a 4-acre pond, they've extended that life of that pond way past 5 years. You know, and of course, based on the site and how much silt is going to come back in it, you know, it might be smart to build a silt pond right above it to capture silt from now on, but you're going to extend the life of that pond, 25 years?
At least.
So there's $2,000 a year. You know, you're going to spend more than that on minnows going crappie fishing. I see Bruce Condello, Victor Moberg, Chris Steelman, one of the Pond Boss moderators, Ryan Schusler checking in, Fighting Texas Aggie, Kyle McKean checking in. David says, go Bob, go. Hey, go Clint, go. He's the guy in the seat of the bulldozer, the trackhoe. You know, we've kind of beat this up here a little bit. Mike Cottrell says he's so right. Make sure you get a good dirt guy, pond guy, and don't go cheap, because I cried twice choosing the wrong guy first. That's pretty
man,
solid.
I wish I could have been there for you.
That's pretty solid. So, you know what? God, let's take that angle for a minute. How does somebody choose the right dirt guy? How do they do that?
The thing that, and I guess I'll kind of tell a little bit of story here. My first trip to the Pond Boss Convention, I had been doing this 18 years. And I had always fashioned myself in the sense of, okay, there's all these guys around here that move dirt, and they know how to move dirt. They're great heavy equipment guys. They know what they're doing. But they're not lake guys.
Mm-hmm.
they can go dig you a hole in your pasture, but is it going to have a nice peninsula? Is it going to have some of those fish structures that are underwater that you're not going to see? That diverse bottom, the depth on this end as well as this end, 3-to-1 slopes so that it's friendly for animals, humans, wildlife to get in and out of, but unfriendly for 40 feet of weeds to grow up.
That's a big
coming
deal.
out.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, we need some weeds, but we need them not where it's going to, mess up our fun and our fishing. So when I first went to the Pond Boss Convention, I met Michael Gray and I met Mike Otto.
Yes,
experts. And here we are, and these guys, I listened to their speeches and I'm going, God, I've said that 15,000 times in the past 2 years, what they just said. And nobody else is saying this, so it's kind of like I found a home. You know, okay, I can talk shop with these guys because they speak the language.
They get it.
So finding a guy that knows what you want. I want a fishing lake. I want this to specifically be a bass lake.
Yes.
There's differences in what you're going to build and I'm going to design, or Mike's going to design, or Michael's going to design, or Bob is going to design, because Bob designs lakes all the time. As opposed to what you want, what type of fish, or what your whole scope is. So finding the right dirt guy is, very important.
And so finding the right dirt guy, you've got to go. I mean, it's no different than finding Bruce Condello. I drive to Lincoln, Nebraska because he works on my teeth. That's a 9-hour ride. I want him to work on my teeth because he knows what he's doing. So what you need to do, and I think it's wise to go look at some lakes that somebody's built. If you can go out and spend a little time and see what they've done, it's a pretty smart thing to do. There's Morgan Tyler. Do you know Morgan? Morgan works for Purina Mills. He kind of zeroes in more on the wildlife side, deer feed, fish food.
I think I've met
You've
Morgan.
met Morgan. I'm sure you have. John Kimberlin, long time, buddy. Good to see you joining in with us. Keith Sutton. Keith Sutton is one of the greatest outdoor riders in the entire United States, and I'm not blowing smoke. He has been printed in some of the dozens and dozens of magazines. He lives in Arkansas. He calls himself Catfish Sutton, but he's mostly zeroes in on fishing, but wildlife as well as conservation. He's a great rider. Nikki Charlie, I don't know Nikki very well yet. I'm going to. Jeff Wheeler, I went to high school with Jeff Wheeler. Good to see Jeff. Shannon Kane's asking a question. He says, how would that new owner's tank work? A tank is a pond in Texas. Okay, so he says, how would that new owner's tank work for game fish other than trophy bass, like giant bluegill instead? Would the temperature variability still be an issue? The answer to that question is temperature variability is an issue. So the way that a pond or a tank or a lake is designed is going to have an impact on its ability to produce fish or achieve whatever the goals that landowner's got. So if, let's say that you were going to sit down with a landowner and figure out how to build a great bluegill pond, would you do it much differently than a bass pond? Because in order to I'm kind of setting him up, I'm baiting him a little bit here. In order to have great big bluegills, you got to have a predator fish. Most people are going to choose largemouth bass because they're about the only fish that can keep up with it. So if you were going to design a bluegill lake compared to a bass lake, would you do it much different?
Not a lot, but I would add a lot more pea gravel.
Okay.
A lot more. The bluegill love that pea gravel, those beds where they can blow a little circle that we've all seen, and they kind of nest and do all that.
Okay.
So I would probably do a few more beds, as well as, yes, it's still got to be, like you said, you still got to have your predator.
Let me tell you the brilliance in that statement after I say hello to Scott Hohensee with Purina Wildlife Guy. Hey, I was at a ranch, Scott, near Edna, Texas today with a landowner named Wayne Clark. He's got a high fence operation and buys his feed there in Edna, and he's feeding nothing but Antler Max products. So, and Purina is a sponsor of my show, so I really appreciate that, as is Texas Hunter. I'm glad you guys do that. Ben Brinkman's joining in here. So here's the brilliance of what he just said. So he's got this, Clint has this innate sense on how to build great fishing lakes, because that's part of what he does, a big part of what he does. But when you have more spawning beds for a bluegill pond, so more pea gravel in water that ranges from 6 inches to 2 feet deep, in essence, what you're doing is you're creating the environment for the best of your best fish to dominate those spawning beds, forcing the remaining bluegills to have to get better or get bigger to knock them off the beds. So the more spawning beds you have, the more big bluegill you're going to get, as long as you have enough bass in there to keep their reproduction levels down. So when you start thinking about having more spawning beds, biologically, you're inviting more reproduction. But you're also inviting more big fish to occupy those beds, which allows the pond to grow more of those, and they're more susceptible to being caught. So that's huge. That's a huge thing about trying to grow big bluegills. So good. That's an outstanding comment. Let's see if we got some more questions. Scott Hanners, Melissa Wellner, Dr. Wellner, good to see you there. Scott Hanners, do you ever run into any problems obtaining a permit from the Corps of Engineers on new construction? Talk about permitting for a minute.
Who? What? Oh.
When you start talking about permitting, the dozer guys start running backwards.
Yeah, I have no recollection, Senator.
Hey, we're not trying to get you on the Supreme Court. We're just trying to get you into the Court of Pond Building.
I've not run into a lot of issues with that. Usually where you see issues on that is where you have a stream that's flowing. And a landowner is very insistent upon using that stream as part of their lake system. I looked at a couple of projects like that and actually turned them down because I'm not good with red tape and I'm not good with playing that game.
Okay, and you know what he just said is that's pretty much the common core among earth movers. They want to go get on the equipment and build something. So if it's pretty important for you to, if you're going to build a pond that you think there's some questions about, call an engineer, or call the NRCS. Get in touch with somebody that knows more about what's going to happen. Like for example, here in Texas, if you're going to try to impound more than 200 acre feet, and this is true nationwide, then you need to get a permit through the Corps of Engineers, a 404 permit. But then if you're going to build a pond in Comal County, Texas, that whole watershed is regulated by a local governing agency. So you got to get a permit from them. So there may be state permits, there may be city permits, there may be county, and there may be local agencies. And the dirt guys, most of the time in that region, they'll know of it, but it's incumbent on you as the landowner to do your due diligence. There's a landowner right now that hired an engineer who made some assumptions that he wasn't going to need a permit, and come to find out after the lake was built, he does. So now we got some conflict between an engineer and a landowner, and the landowner didn't pick the right engineer to figure that out. So quite a bit of what you need to do, so keep in mind, it's caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. So if you're thinking about building a pond, it's incumbent on you. Don't depend on one source to tell you whether you need permits or not. Do some homework. Make a call or two to an engineer in the area, especially if you're going to build a small pond, a farm pond, you don't have to worry about it. No. If you're not trying to dam up a blue line stream or change a floodplain, don't worry about it.
Your dirt guys that know what they're doing, they're going to be aware of that, and they're really not going to take a chance on something that would get them in trouble or the landowner in trouble. So they may bring up, I always would say, meet with your dirt guy first.
Yep.
See what he has to say. If you don't or aren't sure, because I looked at this project and there was plenty of room for an off-channel project that would have not involved the Corps at all. And the landowner was just so adamant about the pool being a part of the channel.
Yep.
And you know, I tried to explain to him that he's going to spend more on the permitting process probably than he would on building the lake. And I don't know what happened with that, but we decided to pass.
And that's a smart.
Respectfully.
Yeah. Well, because you don't want to get involved in anything that could lead to any kind of litigation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So the bottom line is, it's part of your job to figure that out and make sure that you're in the right place and you got all the permit things. David Atkinson, our neighbor, checking in. Leanne Skipworth works for us at Pond Boss. Tricia Miles, Tammy Frost from Birmingham, well, not Birmingham, south of Birmingham, Alabama. Carrie Sweet, good to see you, Carrie. Scott Lindsay, raised my dam about 10 days ago. It's been a little dry in South Carolina since Hurricane Florence. Now Hurricane Michael is going to fill it up in one night. Yep, you know what? Sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. You know, it was pretty interesting. I was kind of tracking Richmond Mill Pond, and I'll share this video with you later, but they had over 20 inches of rain, like 22 or 23 inches of rain in less than 24 hours. And that dam, they've got a giant, I say giant, they have a big U-shaped concrete spillway. And I mean, that spillway did exactly what you wanted it to do. Charlotte Foster, holy cow, there's a friend from the past. Good to see you, Charlotte. How important is it when you engineer a dam, if you're going to dam up a creek? Like I know behind us, you've got a really nice pond back there with a dock on it. And I notice you've got a pond that's kind of a sweeping quarter moon shape. When you design that dam, what do you think about when you're designing a spillway? What's the dam's job? The dam's job really is to impound water and then release excess water in an orderly fashion. So you really have two jobs. You're going to build a dam to do a job. Then behind that dam, you're going to do this, you know, the gravel beds. You're going to do the fish habitat, the humps, the structure, the cover. But when you're thinking about a dam, how do you know how big to build a spillway? Or should you have a spillway? Let's tell them that.
Well, you should always have a spillway. I have gotten away, I'm not saying I won't do them, but I prefer, over the years I've done many, I can't even tell you how many dams I've built and how many spillways we've done. We used to do pipes in the dam. We used to do a pipe that stood up and the water fell into the big pipe, and then another pipe went out the bottom or through the dam, and then when the big pipe filled up, it created a suction. Those work really well. But the thing I've seen over the years is no matter what they're built out of, they're still going to have a lifespan.
Oh,
and 90% of the dam repairs I've had to go do, we wound up having to totally cut that old pipe out of the dam. They lost the entire lake, and you know, we're starting from scratch again.
What kind of pipes?
You know, the old corrugated metal pipes. Aluminum's supposed to last longer, but aluminum costs so crazy amount of money. What I've found is in our area, and I'm not saying this for everywhere, because you know, all soils are different, all places are different, but I have put in a dam, and I usually, depending upon the watershed, how fast the water comes, that's the main component right there. Does not matter how big your watershed is. It matters how fast the water gets there.
Woo, that's a big deal.
Okay?
Listen to that. Listen to that.
We built a 5-acre lake with a 15 to 20 acre watershed. Everybody was screaming, this is not going to work. There's not enough watershed here. I said, that's baloney, because all the water on this property, as soon as it hits, it has to start moving.
So some water runs off, some water doesn't run off.
Correct.
So that's part of the equation that you got to figure out.
But I've started moving my spillways to the outer edges of the dam and then putting a diversion channel out. So
Okay.
we may have a couple of big pipes that lay flat in the dam where you can drive over the top of it if there's a little bit of rain and there's water going out there.
Yeah, so it can take care of a normal rainfall.
But above those pipes, we have the emergency spillway.
Yep.
That's going to handle anything that those pipes can't.
Yep.
Or if you so desire to build a nice concrete spillway,
Yep.
we can do that. But those, it's all dependent upon cost.
And
It's much easier to fix a problem that has occurred in the emergency spillway as opposed to I didn't build a big enough dam and a big enough emergency spillway, and it went over the top of it.
And it breached the dam.
So if it goes around out to the side of it,
that's what you want.
that's what you want.
You know, when you and I were talking before we got ready to go on the air, we were talking about one of the most common questions you get is about a leaky pond. Here's a question. Is it normal for a new pond to leak for a while? I built a 1 acre pond in May of this year. It loses about an inch per day. That's Bill Russell. Hey, Chris Blood's just checking in from Texas Hunter. And then Matt's asking a question, do you like siphon drains? So let's tackle the leaky pond because that's real appropriate. And we've only got a couple minutes left and we're going to sign off. So what do you talk about leaky pond?
Inch a day is normal. That's totally normal.
On a brand new pond.
That's actually less than normal. When you build a new pond, sometimes I've seen them fill all the way up and then drop 5 feet just because you have so much exposed new ground that has to soak up and get moisturized.
So the water wicks into the side of that dry
Correct.
dirt
And
after it first fills up.
Also, as well as how many trees do you have around the outside? They're going to drink water as well.
Yep. There's Carrie Martin's checking in.
I do not consider a problem leak until you see this lake was this high last night and it's this high, 2 feet lower,
So
a foot and a half lower the next morning.
So if it's dropping inches a day, worry about it. But if it's dropping an inch a day, especially a brand new pond. So Bill, here's your answer. Yes, it is normal for a new pond to leak for a little while. If you're losing an inch a day, that's not unusual. On a hot, dry, low humidity day, you're going to lose half an inch of water a day just to evaporation. And if you got any lateral movement through the soils, you're going to lose a little bit of water. And it's typical for a pond to leak. It's not unusual. What you got to figure out is it leaking so much that you need to do something about it. So you got to quantify that. We're knocking on the door of 7:30. Let's take one more question real quick. Matt says, do you like siphon drains?
They work well. If they're the big type that go through the dam where you have a 72-inch barrel and then a 72-inch standpipe and a 36-inch barrel. What happens is the water fills up the big pipe, it forces all the air out the small pipe, and it starts a suction. That will handle a lot of water. What I don't like about those is they're going to have a shelf life. It may not be 5 years from now, it may be 10 years from now, but you're eventually going to have some sort of an issue with that product aging, decaying, or something of that nature.
So don't use galvanized metal, don't use aluminum, use PVC. That lasts a lot longer and it's more expensive. Holy cow, Clint, this hour flew by. Tell everybody how to find you. If you want to talk to Clint about looking at building a lake, he does travel outside this region.
Absolutely.
You know, he told me he was looking at a job site up in Oklahoma, which is a long way away. So
Iowa.
You went to Iowa.
I went to Iowa.
Okay.
That's kind of a special occasion. But,
okay.
We'll go.
Have Dozer will travel.
Yeah. You can find us on the web at lakebuilder.net. Lakebuilder, not builders, but builder.net. That's a common problem everybody seems to have. Our company is Conservation Incorporated. We're based out of Sealy, Texas. We mainly handle Texas, the southern, eastern, western regions. We will go anywhere if the job, is worth it. but I'm always open to talking to people about their issues.
What's your phone number?
My phone number is 832-731-1513.
Perfect.
Our office number is 281-435-1667.
Excellent.
And
hey,
you can find us at www.lakebuilder.net.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us tonight. Pretty entertaining. It's getting dark. We're going to go in. The mosquitoes are starting to carry us off, and it's going to be great fun. And Nikki Charlie's saying you need to go live more often. Nikki wants to pick your brain about pond issues that friend and I have been experiencing. Perfect. Good stuff. You know how to find him now. Give him a call. He'll love to talk to you. So until next Wednesday, we appreciate you guys checking in. Adios.
Thanks, guys.